Well, Turkey suffered through a downturn last year, but it expects to close out 2019 with growth of around 0.5%. Finance and Treasury Minister Berat Albayrak says the economy showed strength despite challenges in the past 2 years, and that budget discipline and lower inflation remain a top priority for 2020. The government forecasts economic growth of 5% this year. That's after the country pulled out of a recession in the third quarter of last year. The Turkish lira lost 36% of its value following a currency crisis in mid-2018. Albayrak says the currency has since stabilised, but it should remain competitive. This would benefit exporters. And annual inflation stood at nearly 12% last month and came in better than expected. The finance minister says it should drop to single digits this year. Well, for more on this, economist Taha Arvas joins us now here in the studio. Hi, Taha.
Hi.
Let's look at what the finance minister has said. The government's obviously going for growth for 2020. Growth last year is expected to come in at 0.5%, but they're aiming for 5% growth in the 2020-22 period. How is the government looking to achieve that coming off such a low base?
Well, I think the good news is that it came off of the 2008 mini economic crisis, well enough to turn positive. So that's the good news. We've seen a strong rebound in the Turkish lira since then. I mean, it's up 10% since a year ago, and it's up nearly 30% since the peak of the crisis. So what he's hinting at there, and I think what's most important, the takeaway, is stabilization of the currency. As long as it's stable, things should go back to normal and on an upward trend as they were before the crisis.
Let's look at the inflation situation. It's probably one of the success stories of Berat Albayrak because it's managed to come down from the dizzying heights of 25% even just a couple of years ago to even single digits for a couple of months last year, and now it's sitting about 12%. The government wants it to get to single digits this year. Do you think that's achievable?
I think it is because much of the price increases were attributed to energy prices. So Turkey is an energy importer, so it's frankly at the mercy of energy prices. It's a large country. There's a lot of taxes on energy. So things like that abating and stabilization of energy prices should help decrease inflation in the long term as well.
Okay, now I want to talk about equities, the stock market. We're hearing almost on a daily basis that Wall Street is hitting fresh record highs, the Nasdaq, the Dow. But I think what's being less reported is the Borsa Istanbul stock market. Now, it's hitting record highs as well. Tell us more about that. What's behind that rally here?
So it's on a tear recently. It's up 42% year on year. So a year ago, if you had purchased, if you invested in the index, the Borsa Istanbul, the BIST 100, you would have made 42% in dollar terms investing in Turkey. And the reason is because there was a period of fear, of uncertainty about what would happen and how, if Turkey could come back from this crisis. So it was kind of investors who had bailed, I'm sure, are kicking themselves now, but those who had jumped in, and a lot of major funds did, because they noticed that the Turkish lira was undervalued. It's still being looked at as undervalued. The one thing that Turkey has going for it, it has many things going for it, but demographics are a very important part of that. It's in a great region, and the uncertainty in Syria is slowly, the war in Syria is coming to an end. Similarly, we had the problems in Iraq, Iran, etc. As long as those things don't increase, as long as those issues kind of handle themselves, or as long as those don't increase in problematic aspects, there shouldn't be a problem.
Now, you mentioned those geopolitical tensions, the tensions between Iran and US, heightening the situation in Libya that Turkey is involved in now, and as you mentioned, Syria. Turkey, I guess, is smack bang in the middle of all that geographically. How do investors manage those variables? Because it really is hard to predict, isn't it?
I mean, that's the main driver here, because Turkey is in a neighborhood where it has all of these negatives, all of these issues of uncertainty, and despite that, we're talking about positive growth last year. So it can only go up from here. I think we're in the beginning of a large rally here. I mean, we see quantitative easing, accommodative central bank policies all over the world. So really, any country with actual growth is a gold mine and will be looked at as such by investors, I think.
Okay, let's see how 2020 plays out. Taha Arvas, always a pleasure.
Thank you.